Alrighty, ladies and gentlemen, an interesting thing happened to me yesterday. And that interesting thing was a friend of mine who lives in New Mexico, her name is Susan, messaged me over Facebook and asked if I had any advice for someone who had just found a set of kittens. Particularly, these were 4-week-old kittens, so they need to be pooped, and they need to be bottle fed. And I thought for a second there, I go, well, if she's going to ask me for advice, maybe I should put that advice in a video and share it with the world, because who knows who else needs it. So here's my first bit of advice. When you're dealing with kittens, particularly a large group of kittens, you got to bottle feed. And what happens when you bottle feed is, of course, the retailers tell you to bend over and take it in the rump, because guess what? You need their stuff immediately. I bought a bottle, a cat bottle, and it was like 12 bucks. And this $12 piece of garbage only fed one kitten at a time. I had 6. So it meant I spent a lot of time feeding. So I'll tell you what I did. I went out and got one of these. You know, this is one of those bottles for ketchup at restaurants, ketchup and mustard. It's a squeezy bottle. Squeezy bottles come in a pack of 6. What I was able to do with this bottle is I went and I got the condensed formula, the powdered formula for cats. I put it in the blender with some yogurt and water. Yogurt is supposed to be good for the digestive tracts. I blended it up. I filled all 6 bottles, and then I put 4 of them in the refrigerator, took the other 2 and fed the 6 cats. And what I would do is I'd pick up a cat, feed it just like a baby. You're able to push a lot more out of this. And then after a little bit, I'd put that cat down, pick up another cat, and I would rotate. I would end up feeding at least every cat at least 3 times. So it would give them time to rest between feedings. Because, you know, it's like, look, we can't really feed a cat in their natural manner. We're not a cat. You know, it's... I believe a female cat, I believe all cats have 8 mammary glands, so they can nurse 8 kittens at once. And, you know, the kittens normally fight over each other. And there's a certain level of them pushing and shoving. We can't reproduce that. So one of those things is that when you're feeding a kitten, it may be exhausting for the kitten. You need to give them as much food as possible in a quick amount of time, and then move on, because it is exhausting. It is a full-time job taking care of kittens. Now the other thing is that if you have a kitten that is bottle feeding, you probably need to poop that kitten. Which means you're going to have to wipe their rear end until they poop. Now I'll tell you what I did is they have these pads, I call them poop pads. They're often called training pads. You can get, you know, like 50 of them for 10 bucks or whatever it is. And you lay those down, and then you get yourself a bowl of water and either tissues or a roll of paper towels. And you sit there and you wipe the kitten's rear end. And you wipe that rear end until you notice that the muscles around the rear end stop contracting with every wipe. That means they're done pooping. It generally comes out about the consistency, anywhere from reasonably hard to somewhere around toothpaste. It can be really messy, and it's disgusting, and the cat is always going to struggle because they hate that. But you got to do it. It's part of being a cat parent. So I did it, and it worked out fine. But you could get out there, you could use a towel, for example. But then you get poop all over your towel, and you're going to have to take that out in the backyard and spray it down if you use a towel. I grant it seems like it's cheaper, but it's a lot more hassle, so I use the poop pads. Now another thing I recommend for all cat owners, stainless steel cat brush. This particular flea comb, I've just used it to comb one of my cats, but it goes in the dishwasher when I'm done, just like a fork would. And then it gets washed, it gets sterilized, so there's no possibility of it getting all nasty and gunky. It's really easy to keep this sterile. And the harder bristles are going to do a much better job of cleaning debris out of the fur. The thing about fleas is that they I believe they're smell oriented. Most of our deterrents are based on smell. Bed bugs, I think, are heat oriented, but fleas are smell oriented. So when you comb the fur, you're going to notice a black sandy substance. That black sandy substance is coagulated blood. And the fleas can smell that. So if that's in there, flea treatments won't work because they'll smell that. It'll overpower whatever treatment you put on them. So that's one thing to understand. Now, a third thing I have to really recommend. This is food grade seashell flour. Fossilized seashell flour. And this stuff is so properly made that I could taste it myself. Tastes like chalk. I think it basically is chalk. And what this is for parasites. When they're kittens, kittens never stop eating. And you can get them to eat just about anything at that point when they're young and they're kittens. So you put some of this on their food, it's supposed to clear out the worms, and you can actually brush it into their coat. And the seashell flour, although it's non-toxic to the cats, it will get into the flea's body and it will penetrate the wax coating of the flea and cause them a lot of discomfort, and they'll leave the cat. That's one of the reasons that you'll notice wild cats will tend to roll in dust, is what they're doing is they're picking up things that disturb the fleas. So a wild cat can actually be less flea-ridden than a domestic cat because they have appropriate dust to roll in. So this is a food-grade version of anti-flea dust. It can be used topically on the cat's fur, and it can be put in their food to get rid of worms. And I will say that it does work, although I have 6 cats at this point, and they're always getting fleas. But, you know, it's 6 of one and a half dozen of the other, and I live in a climate where fleas are a big problem. So this is a very inexpensive methodology of controlling a flea and worm problem, and it works on both. Anyway, oh yes, and the one thing I do have to say for kittens: long sleeves and long pants. Because when I had those 6 kittens, they kept wanting to sit on Daddy's lap. And how do they get there? They claw their way up your leg. At a certain point, you are in so much pain because your legs are raw that these animals are just about ready to kill you. So you got to wear some long pants. That's it. Those are basic things for anyone who's just found a litter of kittens. Obviously, there are a lot more, but yeah, well, that's just my off the top of my head kind of a list. Anyway, I'm going to send this to Susan, and Susan, I hope this helps you out. I'm Richard.